From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven Erlandson, takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
And we are here, and you are too. It's great to have you here. This is the Badass Counseling Show, and I am the host, Sven Erlandson. And wherever you are checking in from, be it Belgium or Lake Winnipesaukee, wherever you might be, it's great to have you here. Poland even, Lithuania. We have lots of folks that check in from Norway and Japan. We love having you here with us. And I am joined in studio, as per usual, by Casey over in the booth, and Rob the Rocket sitting next to me. How are you, you fine young man?
Oh, young, yes. I love that. So far, this is going very well. I'm the young man. But what lake was that, by the way?
Lake Winnipesaukee.
All right. I'm not in a position to argue.
That's all right. And what's the favorite lake that you've ever been on in your entire life, Rob, or one that you have memories of?
Lake George in New York.
In New York, Lake George. I don't think I've ever been on Lake George.
Up in the Adirondacks.
Oh, sounds beautiful. And are you a boater? Are you a fisher or just a looker?
I'm a boat passenger. That's the way I like it.
Amen to that.
I got some friends with a sailboat, and I love being a passenger.
And do you prefer a sailboat or a speedboat, Rob?
I prefer the sailboat because sailing takes you away.
To where you're going.
To where you've always hoid it.
Yeah,
so
that's
I have no idea what that means.
But that's what the song says. See, I'm not as much a sailboat guy. I like them, but I like, because I like water skiing. I like going a little fast on a boat and wind whipping through my absent hair.
Right. It would if you had any. I got it.
Rob, tell us about Divonia.
All right. Divonia is our guest on this episode, Sven, and she wrote in and said, how do you protect your 2-year-old granddaughter from a malignant narcissist father, which is my 34-year-old youngest son, not only from the type of mind control he's already using on her, but from the violent behaviors he exhibits? My daughter-in-law is afraid to report him to authorities for either the potentially dangerous environment he brings her to, his drug use in front of her, well, the list is too long to recount, she says, because of his threats to kill all of us, and then himself if we do anything to keep him from her. A lawyer has told us that there is nothing we can do until he actually does something that we can prove. Surveillance inside the house is illegal in my state, so that idea was a bust. It's a living hell, being terrified every day and night that she's with him, and I'm helpless to change it. The court can't make him comply with anything at this point because the paperwork is still in limbo somewhere.
Divonia, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Sven.
Pleasure's ours. Let's go ahead and get to work. Something jumps out at me that I need you to clarify. It seems like two different things are being said, so I just help my pea brain understand. You say, my daughter-in-law is afraid to report him to authorities for either the potentially dangerous environment he brings her to, his drug use in front of her, et cetera, et cetera. So on one hand, she's afraid to report him to authorities, but then you say the lawyer has told us there's nothing we can do. So is it that there's literally nothing you can do, or is it there's something that she can do, but she's afraid to do?
Well, I think it's twofold. She's afraid to do anything before the court case is actually filed and in front of the judge, because apparently if there's not a custody order in place, if she makes him angry enough, he could keep her and not bring her back on a day that he has her because there's no custody order. So in other words, right now, technically they're still married. And even though they live apart, she has no protection from that. And then also she's afraid because, like I said, he's very threatening. He's very, we don't know if he's bluffing or if he's serious. And, it's hard to try to take a chance with that.
And she's afraid of what? You said, and she's afraid. What's she, just so I'm clear, afraid of him doing what?
Well, we're afraid. He basically said, if you try to take her from me, I will kill you, your family, and my granddaughter, and himself. And that included me and the family part.
Gotcha. It's interesting how your language changed just a moment there. I had said she's afraid of what? And you said, well, she's afraid of da-da-da. And then you said, we're afraid of. You substituted we, her for we. So obviously you're afraid if he's threatened you as well. But it's interesting how the original question was, what's she afraid of? And you substituted in we in there. It was just an interesting sort of movement of your language there. And so if does she have something that she can actually report?
We have pictures, we have some video, and when I say we, I'm helping her, and this is another thing that makes this so difficult. Like, he's my son, he's my youngest son, he was my baby, and to see what he's become, I mean, we're pretty sure that he's a narcissist, a malignant narcissist. He, checks all the boxes. His father was a narcissist. He's passed away since then. But yes, we have some things, but not enough. I mean, like I could call CPS tomorrow, Child Protective Services, and probably they might find something, but he's pretty smart. You know what I mean? He's being real leery now. So he's, holding his cards close to his chest. He used to be real open with all the drug stuff and all that. Now he's hiding stuff. But when I say we, I'm afraid too, but she's much more afraid than I am.
And okay, that's fair. And so let me go ahead. For 2 reasons. What were you going to say?
Well, because I grew up around dysfunctional families full of narcissists and abuse. So you know what I mean? I know how to fight back. She grew up in a beautiful, peaceful, loving family. She doesn't have the claws, for this.
Mm-hmm. And what is most at risk here?
Most at risk, I believe, is my granddaughter, because she's 2. She just turned 2 a little while ago. And I believe she's being emotionally and mentally manipulated as much as children are very vulnerable.
Yes.
And I've heard him trying to turn her against her mother, saying your mother's a loser. She's this, she's that. He's also very heavy-handed with her, insults her all the time as a 2-year-old, telling her she's a loser if she cries, just the whole her having to walk on eggshells like we all do, because you know how narcissists are, man, they flip on a dime. You just look at them cross-eyed and kaboom, like no child. Plus the atmosphere is very neglectful. So.
Okay. And so you are waiting on what with regard to the lawyer, the law, etc., or the courts? What are you waiting on? I got the impression you're waiting on something. What specifically are you waiting on?
Okay, well, luckily he just signed papers to go back to the judge. So now they're going to be going to mediation, hopefully within the next month or so, however long the courts take. But that's what we've been waiting, is to try to get something ordered by the court, because, like I said, until there's something on paper in front of a judge, everything's kind of just hanging out there. There's no set rules or anything.
And mediation for getting some sort of child arrangement, who the child will live with here or there or whatever. Why are they still married?
Well, she left about 4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, because she just couldn't, she couldn't deal with it anymore. She's been with him for almost 5 years. The whole love bombing went on for the first couple years, but then when they got married 2.5 years ago, and then she got pregnant about a month or 2 later, things slowly the mask started to slip.
And so why are they still married?
Well, because that's what they're right now in the process. She filed for custody, and then next she's filing for divorce.
Okay, that's the part I didn't hear, that she is filing for divorce.
Yes, she is.
Okay. And in the meantime, the child is caught in all of the middle of this, and you are fearful for the child. And in the end, you're in a very hard spot, and especially knowing it's your own son. How do you feel when you think about your grandchild? That's one thing, and you have certain feelings there. You must have profoundly mixed feelings with regard to your son.
I've been through a lot of hard stuff in my life, but this could be one of the hardest, because I am so torn. Obviously I love him so much, and he grew up with ADD and everything. So I was always shielding him, being his protector. That's probably part of the problem, but with him, the way he grew up. But yeah, I mean, I love him so much, but I feel so horrible for him because I read all this stuff about how narcissists, how they suffer, they're like this schizoid vacuum.
Yep.
And I sit and cry when I listen to stuff like by you, Dr. Vaknin, all these people. It's like, it tears me apart. But then again, it's like, I can't feel too sorry for him because he's hurting all of us horribly.
Right.
So how can I? So yeah, I'm split between two.
And of course you are split. That makes total sense. Just out of curiosity, what are you doing for your own sanity, healing? Are you seeing a therapist, talking to your clergy person? Are you in a group? What are you doing for you? Because of all those welling of feelings, what are you doing for you?
I do have a therapist. I only see him via Zoom, probably either every 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, so that helps. He keeps me grounded. I have a good, church family. I'm in a group that we started at my church called Praying Moms, because seems like an epidemic of a lot of us grandparents and parents that are being alienated from our children, kept from our grandchildren. And I'm only on the third binary gate, but you're helping me a lot. It's just taking a long time because I have so much amnesia of my past life. So.
Sure. And well, that's good. Then you're referring, for our listeners, she's referring to the book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, and the three binary gates refers to one of the chapters of the book. And and that amnesia regarding the past, the more we bring up our past and flush it out, allow it, even if it's in little bits, little tiny bits, the more we do that bit by bit, the more that a little bit more reveals itself. Maybe we have a dream that reminds us of something. Maybe we have some feeling. It's like, oh my gosh, last time I felt that I was 13 and that was when I was getting bullied, or whatever it might be. And so a little bit more and a little bit more will come. So you're smart to be diving in and flushing it out and doing the written work in there. But back to you. There actually are groups also that on this sort of thing. One resource for you is NAMI.org, NAMI.org. And it's sort of the North American Mental Health Organization, and they provide resources to people throughout North America, NAMI.org. And so I have a friend who's in a group on NAMI for their adult son in his, I think, early 30s, is going through some mental illness. And so that friend of mine, he's in a mental illness group for parents and telling stories, but also learning things from each other. Well, here's something you got to do. Have you thought about this resource? Or you really got to apply pressure, or you really need to back off, or whatever, or this was my experience. And so we learn by listening. We learn, but also it's healing to just be among others. So your group at church is fantastic. Praying Moms, I think that's wonderful. Having a group that specifically knows your problems or something similar, that could be a good resource as well. But you getting your stuff out is going to help you have a more level boat, sort of flushing out, because you know how it is. When we're swollen with emotions, a lot of times we make our worst decisions. Just out of curiosity, what is your daughter-in-law doing for her mental health and her sort of the healing of her soul and getting her feelings out? Do you know if she has any resources?
Yes, she is seeing a therapist like once a week, and she has been since before she even left, because it was already, hitting her really hard because, like I said, she's not used to being treated like that because she grew up in a very functional family. She's also in a Bible study and goes to a church, so she has a lot of good church women with her and a lot of friends, and her family's very supportive.
That's good. And so we're at this sort of juncture with this child then that you guys are in a holding pattern is what you're saying, and waiting for the mediation, and then a decree will likely come at some point. It doesn't come right when you do the mediation more often than not. The decree comes, month later or weeks later or whatever. So you're likely looking at a few months minimum before you have any sort of traction there. And then it's the divorce from there. That would be good as well. Unfortunately, the downside, of course, is that there's a high potential that if he can sell the mediator, sell the court, that he might actually be parenting that child on his own at times. And that, I'm sure that breaks everyone's heart.
Oh, it's the most worrisome. Both of us, we text back and forth on the nights that she's with him. I lay in bed like so worried, so worried. It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's a horrible thing. And I guess what I'm wondering is, I read something about that if we heal ourselves, that might go some distance towards healing even our children, even though they're adults. Do you see any truth to that?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that is one of the cornerstones of my work with adults who have children of any age, especially adult children. And one of the resources I want to send you to start, and this doesn't necessarily help immediately with the grandchild issue, but one of the resources I want you to go to it's actually one of the videos I made. And I reposted it on December 25th, so Christmas Day of 2023. And I'm actually in a big bomber jacket. I'm sitting outside in the snow on a log. And the title out of it is something like 7 Things You Can Do to Help Your Adult Child Heal. And but I am an absolute believer that if you have any hope of, and this goes for you or any parent of an adult child or even a young adult, especially with younger children as well, the biggest thing you can do to heal, to change your parenting and to impact your children, adult or young children, is to heal yourself. There's nothing, because there's nothing that is infusing itself into and affecting your parenting more than your beliefs about yourself, more than your own pains, and they squeak out your beliefs about yourself, what you've been taught about the world. If you've been taught, for instance, let's say, I'm just going to randomly pick, let's say you had a mother who said, oh, be careful, the world's a scary place, we got to really be careful. Or you had a dad that maybe said, yeah, ain't nobody out in that world going to care for you. And if they do pretend to care, they're lying and they want something from you. And they ram that down your throat. What's that teaching the child? It's teaching the child fear of the world. That you're only safe. No one's ever going to care about you. I'm the only person that's ever going to care about you. What you're creating in the child is fear of people, fear of the world. What you're also creating is dependency on you, the parent, the dad, or the mom, which feels all warm and fuzzy when they're young. But the point is, you've just driven a wedge between them and their spouse someday, because they, somewhere in them, they believe, I'm not even sure I can trust this spouse, which, makes you feel good as a parent. See, then you'll always come back to me, but now I'm using the child for my own needs. So you can see even something such as the parent thinks they're doing the child a favor by teaching them sort of, be careful out in the world, but the child is going to literalize that. That's going to become their core belief. The world's a scary place. And that's just one tiny belief. We just finished taping an episode of the show. We had 2 people on the show. We taped the counseling episode, and there was 2 different people on the show, and they were both talking about how basically through underlying messages by their parents' actions, they were basically taught that their feelings and who they are, what they want, doesn't matter. Well, shoot, that's going to affect, if I don't matter, if my feelings don't matter, I'm going to tolerate all manner of shit in a relationship, right? And I'm going to want my children to like me because, I'm not worth crap. So I'm going to be siphoning love from my children, or they're going to be worried about my feelings. I mean, there's all sorts of crap. Any of that you identify with?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, I was, rejected by my mother when I was born. So like I had a lot of crap, coming in, like, I don't matter, I don't exist, nothing.
That's right.
And then I shuffled all around to babysitters. But what I brought into my marriage then is so much neediness, so much codependence. Then I end up being with an extreme taker. And so when I had my children, because he was emotionally unavailable, so when I had my children and they looked up at me with those adoring eyes, like only children can do, like, you're the best thing that ever walked the earth. Well, that just, like, they became my entire world. I had no emotional attachment to my husband, so I attached to them.
That's right. And that's when we start potentially, and I'm not saying this is true in your case, but that's when we potentially start siphoning love from the children, and we're sort of in our own, and children just want to make their parents happy and want, and so we start getting them to pour love into our love cup, whether it's the big hugs or whether it's, oh, mommy, why are you crying? Or daddy's upset. I must have done something bad. What can I do to make daddy feel good again? Because if daddy feels good, then I can get my needs met. So the child is always cueing into the parent wanting to fix them, because if I can just get mom into therapy, or if I can just get dad to stop drinking, then he can finally be the dad I always wanted him to be. And that can continue way into adulthood. I have a client. We just had a session a couple days ago. Grown-ass woman, 60-year-old woman, and she's still trying to win the approval of her 88-year-old mom. And all the other siblings have walked away from mom. And my client was the rejected daughter. But now here at the end of mom's life, she's the one taking care of her. Despite all the shit mom had done and treated her, she's the one taking care of her. And we drilled down and we realized she's still wanting mom's approval. She's still wanting mom at age 60, mom's 88. She's still wanting mom to say, I love you. You're such a great daughter. Because she still feels unhealed. Mom created this wound of, you ain't worth a shit. I don't care about you. I care about your siblings. And I care about my own, cigarettes, martinis, and the country club. And so I don't care about, and so she's still at 60 years old trying to win it. So you can see the power of these beliefs that we're taught about ourselves as children. Well, we're going to have much more right after this short break.
I came across the book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, on badasscounseling.com. I was trying to gain some insight into my past experiences and how they were shaping my present. Sick of being miserable all the time, and I wanted to do the work. I didn't know how. Sven's book made it approachable. He had gone through a lot in life, and I liked his perspective. I started looking forward to the new podcasts on Thursdays and Sundays. I realized I wasn't alone, and we can all use a little help from Sven.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform, and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
We're talking to Divonia. And Divonia is struggling because her grandchild, 2 years old, is in a really hard situation. Father is a drug user and putting bad thoughts into the child's head, calling her a loser when she cries or has feelings, and bad-mouthing the little girl's mother. And Divonia is wrestling not just that her grandchild is unprotected, but that this is her own son who is doing it. What does it do for you, Divonia? As a mom, you talked about the struggle. You love your son and it tears you apart. Yes, understood. What does it do for your own sense of identity? If you were, sort of somewhat dependent upon your children to be somewhat your love source, what does it do for your identity as, gee, I was a good mom, gee, I did my best? What does it do for your own sense of identity as a mom to know that not just, gee, my son is a drug user, and some people fall victim to that, and that sometimes they're more victim than they are. It's not always they're a bad person necessarily, but in this case, he's engaging in actions on top of that. What does it do for your sense of identity to see what your son is doing to himself, but doing to his wife, your daughter-in-law, whom you're in regular contact with, but also to your grandchild? What does that do for your own sense of thinking about your own parenting or your sense of identity as a mom?
My identity as a mom, has really taken a hit because, I'm not going to say that I was a perfect parent, and I did have a kind of a nervous breakdown in my mid 40s and left, the narcissist husband that is, that son's father. So that was, he was like 14 or 15 when that happened. So I know that was a big blow, kind of an abandonment where I abandoned them when that happened. But yeah, I feel like I'm a terrible mother. Like I should have been able to stop this somehow. I should have been able to see it coming. What did I do wrong that I could have shielded them from? Or maybe it was my fault. Maybe my codependency was a big part of the cause of this mental illness. Like, I'm not really sure. So
Let me ask you this. What do you feel if you were boil it down to one biggest thing? And it's more than one thing. I'm a parent. Both my kids are in their 30s. And I know I have made plenty of mistakes for which I have apologized, and I've always left it open to my kids. If there's more stuff that I've done, I want to hear about it. Any rocks that I have put in that burlap sack on their back to weigh them down, I want those back because I put that there. I caused that pain, and the door is always open on that. But my question to you is, what would you say is the single biggest crime that you committed against your son, really? What does it boil down to? Whether it's a one event or whether it was sort of a thread running through all of it, what really is the crime that you committed against your son?
probably would be the thread of I never made him have consequences to his actions because I felt so bad for him that he had ADD and, people were always complaining about his behavior. He's too this, he's too wild, he's too that. I was always the mother grizzly bear that would fight anybody if they said anything wrong about him. If he got in trouble, who did he call? Me, because I would come and bail him out, whereas his father was more of a hard ass,
And so let me ask you this then. What was it that was going on inside of you? And I'm not saying it was, but if it was one of your own anxieties or insecurities or fears from your own shit that were causing you to do that, what might that have been? So for instance, is it, I need to, and I'm just throwing out ideas. I know nothing about your story other than what you've told me. I'm just throwing out some things that I've heard from different people over the years. What was I doing it because I wanted people to think I was a good mom? Was I doing it because I wanted my child to like me, and if they saw me defending them, then they'd like me even more? Because they're the good reasons, supposedly, that I do it, but what's the selfish reason I'm doing it? What's the selfish reason I never gave my child consequences? Is it because I really wanted my child to like me? Is it because I wanted everyone to think I was such a good mom? Or what was the reason that you never gave your child consequences? What was going on inside of you, deep down inside of you?
Now that I'm thinking about it with you asking me that question, I was a very problematic child. I guess maybe it was from the circumstances, but I remember, always being told you're too loud, you're too rambunctious, you're too this, you're too annoying, you talk too much, leave us alone, children should be seen and not heard. So maybe it's because I always felt like, my worth was not enough to be able to be myself, to be that wild, kid having fun, running around, talking. And so maybe by me allowing him to be that, but still be loved, if you want to call it that, maybe that was my way of trying to make that up to my own self because I didn't have that kind of acceptance.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense. If a child is being told, you're too loud, you're too annoying, you're too rambunctious, they're basically saying, I don't like you the way you are. Change. And so what you wanted to do was to give your child, and it hurts. The child gets the message loud and clear. You don't like me. Got it. And it hurts. Thanks. Fuck you. That hurts. And so you didn't want your child to feel bad or hate on themselves for being loud or rambunctious or whatever. And then unfortunately, one thing leads to another. And before you know it, the inmates are running the asylum. There's no boundaries whatsoever. And it sounds like that's sort of where we've gotten. Would that be somewhat accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
what was interesting to me was how you phrased it, though. You said, I was a problematic child and I was constantly being told I was too loud, I was too annoying, too rambunctious, too this, too that. You opened it by saying, I was a problematic child. Isn't it fascinating that you blame the child?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Reasonable to assume you got those messages at a very young age, 2, 4, 5, 8, something like that? Just out of curiosity, what does it likely indicate if a parent is saying to a child, you're too loud, or you're too quiet, or you're too scared, or you're too risky, or you're too annoying, or you're too soft, or you're too... If a parent is saying that to a child, what's likely going on there? Just play with the idea.
I mean, from the parent's perspective or from the child's perspective?
From the outsider's perspective, looking at the situation. If you were watching two parents and their two children, and they're saying those sorts of things to children, what's likely going on from your perspective? There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious, what does that probably indicate?
Well, that probably indicates that they have these expectations of this child that the child isn't either meeting, or maybe they don't even want the child around. I mean, in my case, you know what I mean? It was more like I was crying out for love. I needed love so bad, and, and attachment. Like I never really got to attach to a primary caregiver when I was very young. So yeah. And to me, by them saying that stuff was like, we don't really care. Like, just keep your distance. Be quiet. You're a child. You're here. We're giving you food, shelter, and all that. But don't make a lot of
right.
Beats.
That's exactly right. And they had expectations, and it ain't what you're doing. I don't like that. Whatever you're doing right now, that thing you're doing, I don't like it. Okay. But from the child's perspective, the child is screaming out for love. Right. What children shout loudest when feeling heard least. When their loudness might be through absolute silence. Their loudness might be through loudness, whatever it is. But the point is, the child is having a need. And because the parent isn't interested in meeting that need, or the parent doesn't know how to meet that need, the parent labels the child the problem. Isn't it fascinating that you, right now, at your age, as a grandmother, you think back on your childhood and you have adopted their belief system, and you say, I was a problematic child. You're still saying that old saw as if it's fact. It was never fact to begin with. What's really happening when a parent labels a child, even if it's some cutesy name, or, oh, he's always been a little brat, he's been a brat, or she's always been the sassy one. When you label the child, what's really happening, it's an admission by the parent. The parent is admitting, I don't know how to meet this child's needs. So I'm going to condemn. I'm going to name. I'm going to label. I'm going to judge this child. And guess what? You say that twice, you say that 5 times, that child now believes it. That is now their fucking identity. You repeat that over the next 20 years, everybody's going to know, oh, Tom was the brat. And Jenny, she was the sassy one. And Kent, God, he was always Mr. Studious. Mom and Dad always called him Little Professor, or whatever. And those names stick. You still believe the bullshit that you were a problem child. A problem child. You were a child. You were a fucking child. And children don't know how to sit down and say, Mother, Father, I'm feeling like I would like 5 more hugs today. No. It's just like they're wanting attention. They're wanting love. You were a child trying everything. What do children know how to do? Cry, yell, run away, get mad, fall down, be silent. Real basic stuff. They don't know how to articulate. My needs aren't being met. Please, Mommy. Please, Daddy. And yet you're still... I can't
believe you picked up on that.
You're
that
still
I
judging
that about myself.
You are still judging your past self. That's right. And it's because the parents don't know how to parent. And it's easier to blame the child. It's easier. And guess what? The child's like, oh, it must be true. Mommy and Daddy love me. Mommy and Daddy are good. If they say it, it must be true. And so that's always been your identity. What if you were never to this or to that to begin with? What if you were just a lovely balance of everything? What if you always have been, and this was a bullshit story that you're still telling yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have been as bad as they labeled me, right? Well, I mean, I was kind of cutie.
Let me ask you this question. If you're getting that message I'll just randomly pick an age 5, what is it that could justify, that a 5-year-old could possibly do to cause them, that would justify that 5-year-old believing that they're a bad child, that they're not enough, or they're too much, or they're just not any good? What could a 5-year-old possibly do that would justify that belief system in a child?
I mean, I don't think there really is anything.
Exactly. Nothing. That's like
Right.
saying your grandchild. Is there anything that child could possibly do to justify that child believing that they're a loser?
No.
No, of
Not
course not.
hardly. No.
There was, and so it was bullshit what you were taught about yourself. It's been bullshit from the beginning. So let me ask you this then. What is it that your son, your 34-year-old son, was taught to believe about himself? If you were to speculate, what were the messages he got that are chewing him up from inside, that he's using drugs to escape, that he's spilling his venom onto other people? What venom is filling him up? What does he believe about himself? Either from you, from his father. What might your son believe about himself?
I think somehow he got the message that he was a piece of shit. I mean, I really do. I feel like he's filled with shame and self-loathing, though he hides it really well behind that mask of, bravado and grandiosity and arrogance, But I know, like, and his wife confirmed this too, like if he loses stuff all the time. And while there was something that I used to say, which is terrible, I thought about that the other day. I used to tell him, you'd lose your head if it wasn't attached. I mean, like over and over.
In other words,
okay?
you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
That's the message the child gets. I'm a fucking idiot.
I know.
And then to be abandoned, and I'm not trying to hurt you. I swear to God, I'm not trying to hurt you. But then to have your own mother walk away from you when you're a teenager only confirms I must be a piece of shit. My own mother doesn't want to be with me.
Yep. And he hates women now. He literally hates women.
And he's going to do everything he can to hurt them.
Yes.
And he's now hurting. And a little girl is just the acorn version of a woman oak. And so he's hurting her too. And
it's only going to get worse the older she gets.
Oh, for sure. And the truth is, yes, and that's reasonable to assume if nobody stops him. And so, and I love that you guys are putting things in motion with the court. I think that's really smart. And, I know nothing about the law, so I'm not even going to presume to comment on the law side of it. And the truth is, the damage being done to your 2-year-old granddaughter emotionally and into her soul can be corrected later. It can be healed. It can. Okay. So on one hand, it's horrific what's being done. I'm not disputing that, but it is not a terminal thing. This can be fixed. It can be healed. All right. So on one hand, that takes some of the immediate fear out of it. But on the other hand, I have to ask, at what point, if necessary, do we defend the child above our own self-interest?
I mean, she's the main priority. You know what I mean? If I have to sacrifice, the rest of my life's relationship with my son, then so be it. Then that's what I have to do. I don't want it to go that far because he's already pushed away so many people in the family. Nobody wants to have anything to do,
Has he pushed you away?
Oh, he pushes me away a lot, but then he always pulls me back in when he needs me.
Right. And the truth is, one of the things is I mentioned my 60-year-old client and 88-year-old mother and so forth, that the child is wanting, even the adult child is still wanting something. They're always wanting something. That's why they keep the parent near or keep coming back. They're wanting something. And you may think it's the money, but deep down, it's not the money. It's not the support. It's the affirmation of worth that they never got. It's the righting of wrongs. It's the acknowledgement of everything that I did to hurt you, my son. Everything I have done. And so what I would encourage you to do is go back and watch that video because it gives you 7 steps you can take to help your child heal. You may never get a relationship with your child, but you can definitely take steps to help your adult child heal. Now, he may not bite or he may not be interested, whatever, but you have as much of an obligation to heal him, or at least to try, if it might impact your granddaughter. And if it might impact your son is not lost yet. He is not lost. That even the lost can be found. Even broken souls can be healed. I'm an eternal believer in that. I really am. But it takes the ones who did the damage to own the damage. And unfortunately, his father is gone. How lucky for the father, right? Thanks for nothing. But you can at least make the effort to undo the damage that you did. You can't undo what the father did, but you can undo. Right. And I believe the past can be rewritten. I really believe that by how we rethink, reinterpret when people own their shit. Because I just had someone on the last show we taped, and I asked the woman on the show, and she had grown up in bad home and all this. And I said, everybody answers this question differently, but I asked this woman, I said, which was worse for you, the stuff that was done to you from 0 to 18, or the fact that your mother has never atoned for its sins, never apologized, that your mother believes she's a good mom, or whatever the mother believes about herself isn't even the point. Is the greater crime for you what was done to you, or the fact that it was never owned or apologized for? And everybody answers this question differently. And for this woman, it was that neither of my parents has put in any fucking effort to fix what they did. They don't even want to admit it. So you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to correct, to right the wrongs. But what it takes is a very large slice of humble pie, a very large amount of eating crow. And so now it comes down to your courage, whether or not you have the courage to atone for your son's sake, to do what you can to own your shit. What are your thoughts or feelings on that?
I mean, that is my goal. I truly believe that broken souls can be healed. I believe in the power of, the Holy Spirit, whatever,
Sure.
you want to call it.
Sure.
But yeah. The problem is that he tells me that he's forgiven me for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I tell him all the time, I'm so sorry about all the stuff that happened. I never wanted any of that to turn out that way, blah, blah, blah. And he says, oh, that's all water under the bridge. We're fine. I don't hold that against you. But in the next breath, when I try to talk to him about anything just a little bit under the surface, he gets furious. And it was like last week, he looked at me, he's like, if I have any mental health issues, you caused them.
Right.
And I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Right. And he's in immense pain. And, children have adult children, young children, old adult children have many feelings towards the parents, many feelings as a result of the parents. So what that says to me, just those two little snippets, he loves his mom. And he doesn't want you to feel bad, and he doesn't want to make a big deal of it. Or maybe he feels like, I don't want to have a victim mentality, or, when people throw that around or whatever. But the bottom line is on one hand, he doesn't want to feel bad or doesn't want to think about it and doesn't want to talk about it. But on the other hand, he is hurting. He is smarting because of his father, because of his mother, you. And he does have a lot of pain. And the bottom line is, a lot of times, children don't want their parents to feel pain, or it's so painful for him, he doesn't want to discuss it or talk about it. And what I'm recommending is not that you even have a conversation with him per se. As I talk about in that video of December 25th, 2023, is you begin simply by creating a list for yourself. I want you to list a bullet point list of every single thing that you have done ever to hurt your son, or that might have hurt your son. And start with the whoppers. Start with the abandonment. Start with, I didn't do this or I did that. And then next to each of those bullet points, do other bullet points next to each one of how I likely made you feel because I abandoned you, because I didn't show up at your 5th grade sports championship, because I was, whatever. And how that likely made you feel. So you're tuning into what I might have done to hurt you, and then how that like you feel. So now you're tuning into the child and what he might have felt, and you're making this long list. All right, I want you to start there, and then start with how each of those might have made him feel. And then that video will step you through the other things that you can be doing. But the goal is not to restore your relationship with the child. You may never get that. The goal is to help him heal. You may never get that relationship, or maybe you will. That's not the point. Because if that's the goal, then it's self-interest. The goal is to help the adult child heal. And there are things you can do. And whether that saves your grandchild or not, you're at least doing everything you can to save your child, to atone, to repent, to throw yourself at the feet of the jury and say, there is no excuse. There is no excuse. I should have done better. And yes, you know that you had your own pain that was corrupting your thinking and your own shit. That's not his problem. You were his child. He was your child and he still is your child. He was utterly at your mercy. And so you having the courage to go in and do this work rather than just, well, I did my best and, not my problem. And no, you didn't do your best, or it is your problem. It's clearly your problem now. But even whatever, the bottom line is you have the opportunity to heal another human being whom you have wronged. I guarantee you, if you were to offend one of the women at your church, one of your friends, you would go back and you would apologize for what you did, because that would be the decent thing to do, the gracious thing to do. Well, it's no different when it's your own son. In fact, it's more so necessary. I want to thank you so much for being on the show, Divonia. You've just been lovely. And your sense of openness, your sense of you're not protecting yourself. You're willing to look at your own shit. I admire that in any human being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sven. This really opened my eyes to some things. I'm going to watch that video and then start that list.
Very good. And Rob, any thoughts?
Yeah, interesting to approach problems on this particular show from the standpoint of the parent. And it's a parent who doesn't say, no, I was a good parent.
Right.
That was refreshing for me. Yes. And I'm sad, but hopeful.
Yeah, very well said, Rob. That's exactly it. To hear it from the perspective of a parent and one who is open to looking at her own stuff. I remember from my back when I was a clergyman, pastor, and a seminary and so forth. And I remember one of the great theologians that, of course, I was a Lutheran pastor, and one of the writings of Martin Luther, when he spoke of the purpose of the gospel, Martin Luther said, the purpose of the gospel, and which in Christian language means, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and so forth, but ultimately, the purpose of the message of God is fundamentally to do two things. It's to convict and to compel. That God's message helps us to see our brokenness, our failings, our humanness, the things where we have failed, fucked up, fallen down, hurt other people, but it also compels us to heal those wounds, compels us to own the damage we've done, compels us to do better, compels us to be instruments of God's love in the world. And sometimes that means owning the problems that we have created. Divonia, you are a woman of courage, and I applaud you for that. And I think you're on the right track. And I so applaud you for defending your grandchild and helping out, backing up your daughter-in-law, but also being open to doing what you can to heal your son. I admire you as a mother of an adult child, truly.
Thank you, Sven. It's been an honor to be on your show.
Thank you so much. And to all of our listening audience around the world, I think I speak for all of you when I say, wow, what a treat it was to have her. Greetings to all of you around the world on behalf of the team here. Have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.